Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Alex Vindman back with us today. We'll chat with Alex in just a moment, but first, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and to be notified every time we post a new episode. So Alex Vindman and his family left the Soviet Union as refugees when he was 3 years old. He's a retired 21-year U.S. Army combat veteran who also served as a national security expert working for presidents of both parties. He was wounded in Iraq and awarded a Purple Heart. His military service took him from the battlefield to the Pentagon and the White House, where he served as a director on the National Security Council staff. During his time on the National Security Council, he witnessed a corrupt and illegal abuse of power by a president intent on undermining an election. As was his duty under the Constitution, he reported the wrongdoing. His decision to blow the whistle led to the 2019 impeachment of President Donald Trump, whose retribution ultimately cost him his military career. After he left the military, Alex dedicated himself to public service outside of uniform, helping veterans run for office so they can serve as a check on corruption and abuse of power. He's also the author of the It Matters Substack and the New York Times bestselling books It Matters and The Folly of Realism. And he's now running for the U.S. Senate in Florida. Alex, welcome back into the back room.
Hey, Andy. Good to be back with you.
So I'm very excited to talk with you about your Senate campaign. Congratulations on that. But first, before we get to that, I do want to ask you about the stunning breaking news over the last few days. Trump's attack on Iran, the assassination of several top leaders in Iran, including Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Give me your thoughts on all this.
Well, it's going to sound a little bit trite here, but, which war are we on now? Because Donald Trump has used force against Nigeria, against Venezuela, against Iran on multiple occasions. He's threatened force against other states. He's embraced our traditional adversaries like Russia, caved to China, and abused our traditional allies like Ukraine and Europe. So what does that all amount to? A whole lot of chaos. It really worries me that we're involved in this. This is very difficult than his other military adventures to date. This is a country of 90 million people, hundreds of thousands of military under arms. Yes, we've had a successful first 48 hours of strikes, as expected from the most powerful military in the world. But where does that take us? What is the end game? I served in Iraq. And Iran obviously neighbors Iraq, and was wounded by a roadside bomb of Iranian design. So I understand, I think, more than many, the pain and suffering that the Iranians have inflicted on America, on American soldiers over the course of nearly 50 years. Whether it was the Beirut Marine barracks bombings, hundreds, potentially thousands killed and wounded in Iraq. This is an evil regime, but that doesn't necessarily translate or cross over to a flippant use of force that brings American soldiers and American interests into harm's way. So we have a process for this. Our founding fathers, nearly 250 years ago, conceived of an idea in which these types of issues are not necessarily are not unilaterally taken by the president, but weighed and deliberated by the representatives of the American people. Congress is supposed to weigh in. Congress is supposed to ask the tough questions. They're supposed to make sure that the president has a plan, not for day one, not for day two, but for the war, with this basic theory that lives on the line, our lives are on the line, and the use of military force should be amongst the last resorts, not the first go-to tool. And I think all that said, the president absolutely This to me looks like a war that didn't meet any of the thresholds, likely an illegal war, a war that is a one of choice, not because America was an immediate threat. Um, so, and then the question is, fundamentally, he's already breached that constitutional responsibility. Is Congress are the senators and representatives going to hold him to account and find out what his plans are? And that looks unlikely. It looks like a hyper partisan. This is shaping up to be a hyper partisan debate with a rubber stamp by Congress for a war that's very unpopular with the American people. Looks like only about 27% of the American public supports this war, and I'm concerned. I've been concerned about this administration, undertaking any of these types of really, really challenging foreign policy endeavors because they're not necessarily right to manage complexity. The military might be, but it's the politicians that provide the instructions and the ground rules for these types of things. So, maybe you're sensing a little bit of mixed feelings here because I understand Iran is an evil regime and, they go to hell. The leadership of that regime, they've hurt a lot of Americans. But I also understand the way the system is supposed to work, and we need answers. The American people deserve answers.
Yeah, you're touching on something that's really important because the emotions that many Americans have, or I think most Americans have, is like, yeah, they're bad guys. They got to go. They should go. But the process that you refer to is what makes us a democracy, what makes us distinct from third world nations. So what we're experiencing right now is an administration that basically says to us, the American people, the end justifies the means.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what we did or didn't do or what process we went through. These are bad guys. They got to go. I mean, in the States here, in our criminal system, there could be a serial killer holed up in a house and cops break in illegally, arrest him, forget to read him his Miranda rights. He walks, right? He goes free, right? Because we have a constitution and a rule of law. The end doesn't justify the means. So Trump himself has said this is a war. Did you see the press conference this morning with Hegseth and Kane? Hegseth clearly it sounds like somebody who's prosecuting a war. Kane said this is major combat operation. Those are his words. So this is war, but they failed to get congressional approval, nor did they go to the UN Security Council to get authorization. So it's illegal, isn't it?
Yeah, I think. I think that this is certainly maybe about the most flippant use of force for major combat operations. That is a enormous departure from, let's say, even the Bush administration that had underlying UN Security Council resolutions and congressional action that substantiated the use of force, even if it was tenuous. This is completely different. This is, again, the president flaunting his constitutional responsibilities, abusing his power, and Congress, including my opponent Ashley Moody, failing to hold him to account. I think, I'm not. I don't know if I'm ready to declare it wholesale illegal, because I wonder what I mean, even this administration, I've seen them use some sort of legal justification for, it was BS, but a legal justification for Venezuela and Nigeria.
They find something somewhere.
Yeah. But I don't think it meets any of the traditional thresholds for the use of force. And I think, if I will just channel my twin brother, who's maybe better on this because he's an attorney, a national security attorney, and he has called it illegal. So I'm going to defer to him on this one.
You mentioned Venezuela, right? That wasn't that long ago. We took Maduro out. He's in the United States. He's going to face prosecution. But seemingly nothing has changed in Venezuela. The regime is still in control of the country with the military, with the biker gangs. Whoever was there before is there now. Is this just a longer version of that military action? Is that what we're seeing here? That at the end of the day, we take out the supreme leader, they'll put another cleric in charge. And then the regime is going to be exactly the way it is. Trump will leave eventually for a few weeks, claim mission accomplished, claim that he changed the whole geopolitical structure in the Middle East. And like everything else, it just ends up being an exercise in futility and a big giant lie.
I think to a certain extent that's true. So 60% is the number I saw of the political prisoners held in prisons in Venezuela remain there. So there hasn't been a revolution. There is, you could hardly claim an evolution. It's the same kind of leadership there. It's still the Maduro regime without Maduro there. So I think Trump is looking for somebody that he could say, that will potentially align with his views and opening up oil and gas markets and things of that nature. I don't think this is that kind of regime. The best case scenario here, I think, is a severely degraded and weakened revolutionary republic that could mess around in the region in the aftermath of this war. Because right now they're going full bore against any and every location that U.S. and UK and European assets are, and are really actually doing some pretty punishing strikes. Yes, U.S. military is performing extremely well, but the Iranians are counterpunching and inflicting damage, including the fact that we lost 4 American service members and a score more that were injured. And I think that there'll probably be additional reports coming in. I think this administration is probably going to try to hide some of that and do a drip of information to, cover up the costs of this war. But I think the best case scenario is in the aftermath that Iran is degraded and their ability to use the military to attack the U.S. and Israel is degraded. But the regime is likely in place. I think the fact that this results in a regime change seems unlikely. You'll have fundamentally kind of different names, but the same kind of leadership. Because regime change has to come internally, unless you're putting boots on the ground, and that would be the height of folly to try to put boots on the ground in a country of 90 million people, and would put in thousands and thousands of troops in harm's way. So with air power only, we're talking about degrading the regime, potentially creating some opportunities for some revolutionary activities from moderates, but that seems unlikely because the monopoly on force still resides with the regime and regime elements, and it's hard to imagine that given the existential nature domestically in Iran, that they're just going to throw up their hands and turn over power to somebody else. That's unlikely. So chaos in Iran, chaos in the region, significant costs for the U.S., and the best case scenario is we degrade Iran. I don't know if that means we completely neutralize their capability to maintain a nuclear program or achieve a nuclear breakout. That's hard to say at this juncture. I don't know if we get there.
Another catalyst in regime change is the people, right? So Trump and Hegseth this morning, they both have strongly urged the Iranian people to revolt. How likely do you think that kind of uprising can take place in Iran right now and achieve the end goal of regime change?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the stories about this administration. They're certainly a day late and a dollar short with regards to nurturing a revolt. If they had looked to execute this, a month ago, when there were hundreds of thousands and millions of people in the street, that might be a different story. But they waited until the regime effectively suppressed the revolt, where it looks like somewhere in the ballpark of 40,000 or more people were killed to suppress that revolt. And I think that the appetite for more people to just go ahead and squander their lives on a U.S. that looks like it's not going to necessarily be there is is unlikely. And then I think that there's a question here for the people of Iran. The revolutionary regime has been a disaster. It's been oppressive and murdered countless Iranians. But there's a concern about what happens if there is a large scale revolt and there's a power vacuum and who takes over. Is it just a country that devolves into chaos? Is it does it play out like Iraq for the first 10 plus years, where it looks ungovernable and hundreds of thousands of people end up dying? So I think that's a difficult question. There is no plan for a leadership to replace the revolutionary leadership of Iran.
Yeah, one of the things I can't get my arms around is how last June, when we bombed Iraq, Trump bragged for so long how he had obliterated, that's his word, obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities. Here we are just 8 months later, and we have to go to war. You used the words last resort before, and you mentioned that U.S. soldiers have died. The promise we make to our soldiers when they suit up, when people like you suit up, is that we won't put them in harm's way unless there's an imminent threat and it's a last resort. If we obliterated their nuclear capabilities last June, how are we in this situation today? So was he lying then, or is he lying now, or both?
I mean, it's Trump. He lies endlessly. I think we degraded their nuclear capability. The degraded nuclear capability that Iran possesses wasn't a threat 3 days ago, at least not an imminent threat. Certainly, it had a latent potential to be a huge threat, but it wasn't an imminent threat. Negotiations looked like they were chipping away at this idea that Iran would ever achieve a nuclear capability. And I think Trump mismanaged this. He basically he was convinced that he needed X number of forces in theater, and he didn't realize what that meant. And then when he achieved that level of force, he basically looked at it and said, "If I back out now, I look weak," and decided he basically that was his calculus for going to war. He did not want to look weak without having all of those resources there. He didn't want to look like want it to look like a bluff. So it was nothing near a last resort. There was probably a way to do this without going to war with Iran.
I mean, we had heard reporting that diplomacy was potentially starting to work in the days leading up to this war. Had you heard anything to that effect besides what the rest of us hear in the news?
I mean, I was seeing largely what everybody else was, that there was some progress being made. One of my biggest issues with the Trump administration is that these type of immensely challenging, in the military we call them wicked problems, with all these different inputs and potential fallout and blowback. These things need to be managed by the best and brightest, and that the most competent administrations would be extremely challenged in order to do this. This is the exact opposite of competent. The military is the best in the world, but the civilian leadership that's providing the instructions is the worst and least qualified we've had. And that that the president is very cavalier with the use of force. He has been since his first administration with regards to Iran. He's, I've been saying that it was just a matter of time. Both in the first use, I was very confident we were going to use force against Iran in the summer because the threshold was very low, and that it's going to play itself out now with a much more dangerous this current war with a much more dangerous scenario. So I'm not sure whose interest this serves. I think maybe the best case scenario again is a degraded Iran, less capable in the long term, or medium term at least, of attacking Israel, of attacking U.S. interests. If this war gets winds down in a couple weeks, but at what cost? The Middle East is basically on fire at the moment.
Yeah, and this is my last question I want to ask you on this subject. It seems like we could be on fire here at home too. I mean, over the weekend there was a suspected terror attack in Austin. The shooter was wearing a sweatshirt that said "Property of Allah" and another shirt with an Iranian flag design on it. How concerned should we be about such a connection here at home through violence to the war in Iran now?
So Iran has attempted to interfere in our elections. They've driven some of the left wing, far left wing, kind of anti-Semitic attacks, and bolstered some of the pro-Hamas protests in this country. There's some fairly sufficient evidence to substantiate that, and it is not, they support Hezbollah, which has a footprint in Latin America, and it is not far-fetched to believe that the Iranians have assets. I mean, they've tried to assassinate opponents here, frankly, on several occasions, including in New York, so that they would attempt to try to activate it. That is given that they will look at these things carefully to impose costs in an existential war. Under normal circumstances, we would have a FBI that is robust and focused on counterterrorism, but now they're led by Kat Patel.
Right.
And their focus is on, Epstein files, and their focus is on undocumented people, and their focus is on just distractions. They've deconstructed both DOJ, as DHS, and FBI, and we are less effective at facing these kinds of challenges. So this could happen on Trump's watch, and it will be, not simply because the Iranians are particularly effective, but because the Trump administration has politicized everything, and that we've become increasingly ineffective in national defense and national security.
Well, let's hope that's just a one-off isolated incident. And now let's talk about something more positive and exciting, your Senate campaign. And just for a minute or so, let's set the table for the folks at home. This is a special election to fill the remaining 2 years of the seat vacated by Marco Rubio when he became Secretary of State. You'll likely be facing Attorney General Ashley Moody, who you referenced before, who Governor Ron DeSantis appointed to replace Rubio until this election. The primary is August 18th. How's the campaign going?
The campaign is going extremely well. There are some early indicators, support coming in from around the country, and more importantly in state, that indicates we are going to do something historic here. I think that my service record, more than 20 years in the military, leadership in combat, leadership at the highest levels of national security, is and somebody that's spoken truth to power, reported corruption at the highest levels, and suffered the consequences of retaliation, intimidation, ending my career, is a stark contrast to somebody like Ashley Moody, who was selected to be a rubber stamp, an automatic yes vote for this chaos and corruption agenda, and is directly tied to some of the things that are most forefront of mind for the people of Florida. Insurance. It was under her watch that insurance rates started to explode, because she was happy giving a pass to the insurance companies in the state of Florida, allowing them to skirt paying out claims, raising premiums, passing the buck onto the ordinary homeowners and renters, while the insurance companies just made money hand over fist. That is a pretty awful record. She owns all of the baggage of the chaos and corruption of the Trump administration and her tenure as the Attorney General, with life becoming increasingly unaffordable, but with little name recognition. Whereas, I come in as a career public servant that served presidents of both parties, that has been critical of leaders, regardless of their party, that is not beholden to special interests or any party leadership. And I think to me is something that really is translating across to the Florida voters and the Florida supporters here, and we have an ability to do something in a state that has had a very, very poor track record for the Democratic Party. We have an opportunity to do something pretty unique here and win statewide.
So, do you remember the moment where you kicked back and said, I want to get myself into that bastion of bipartisanship?
Yeah, that's funny. The U.S. Senate. Look, I think part of the story here is I've been serving. I served in uniform, and afterwards I kept plugging away at advancing U.S. national security, helping get veterans elected around the country. So my heart has always been in public service and trying to figure out the best way to do that. Um, my head warned me about jumping into both that bastion of bipartisanship as well as trying to take on the state and reach 23 million people. But I became convinced of two things. I became convinced, one, that we could win. I looked at the data. We definitely have a path to victory in the state. There'll be a lot of naysayers, but one thing that's clear is that we'll converge until we overtake my opponent. And the second thing is that the urgency of the moment was too great. I couldn't sit on the sidelines when I have the ability to step in, make a race out of the Senate here in Florida, deliver this Senate seat and accountability for the American people. I think that's frankly what this is all about. I attended the State of the Union with my twin brother a week ago on Tuesday, and it was the whole kind of theory of both of us going there is that we've held the president to account before, and we're going to continue to do it again. And I think that's what's missing, is that there is no accountability with this administration on any of of what they're doing, whether it's overseas with these wars, whether it's attacking our fellow citizens and murdering American civilians, with regards to ICE that is escalating and not de-escalating and not exercising their limited role for immigration and customs enforcement, but really kind of looking to abuse populations. Corruption, about as we've had corruption scandals in this country before. We've had periods of deep corruption, but nothing like we've witnessed here with the Trump administration and their enrichment. And Ashley Moody is part of that story, going to the Senate and having corporate stock traded, her corporate stock traded to the tune of $1 million on information that only congressmen and senators get. That should be illegal. These things need to stop, and the American people sense that the system is increasingly rigged against them. It's basically a complicity between career politicians and the ultra wealthy to deliver for those two pockets, with the burden shifting to ordinary people. That rigged system is created a huge appetite for change, and I think all that was clear to me. Accountability, so that we could end the chaos, crush corruption, and work on cutting costs.
You mentioned insurance before. What else are the issues that you think are of most concern to Floridians?
It's interesting. I think a lot of things are common with the rest of the country. Insurance is a bit of an outlier. We have the highest insurance rates in the country. A lot of the big insurance companies have exited. We have insurance companies, startups that are likely untested and will not be there when that rainy day comes, when there's a need to file a claim. I think the fact that Ashley Moody was happy to cut emergency relief funds and rebuilding funds is a bit unique here to Florida, to the people of Florida. There are still folks who were rebuilding from previous hurricanes. I think then healthcare, which is a lot more common with other parts of the country, that we've had Affordable Care Act subsidies cut, hundreds of thousands of folks being kicked off, Medicaid being cut. It's just, look, I'd frame it this way. Anytime you could see a further consolidation of wealth, the billionaires benefiting, and that burden shifting to ordinary people, that's what we're experiencing here in Florida. So we're experiencing it around the country, but we're experiencing it here in Florida. in maybe some unique ways.
Florida also has a very large veteran population. If you make it to the Senate, how do you plan to help Florida's veterans?
There are both active duty and masses of veterans and military families. We have three different combatant command headquarters here. We have Southcom in Miami. We have CENTCOM, Central Command and Special Operations Command in Tampa. Those are significant footprints. Some of our CENTCOM community is in harm's way today because of this war in Iran. So I'm very focused on making sure that we are not casual and cavalier with regards to the use of force, that we ask tough questions before we commit our troops to harm's way, and that it's truly in the interest of U.S. national security. I'm very concerned about some of the things that are going on with regards to the VA. This was just a week ago, but within a 24-hour period, the VA looked to strip thousands and thousands of veterans of benefits by reformulating how disability is determined. And then with the massive backlash against that idea, they turned around and about-faced. But this is also an administration that is cutting tens of thousands of jobs at the VA and cutting services for the VA. Those are kind of central issues front of mind. I think there are people there. We need to expand some of the we had this burn pit legislation, but there are people that are still excluded from being able to have their military service assessed for the harm and the trauma that they encountered through military service. So we need to make sure that we're accounting for those. And really, its promises kept. We have a military that's tiny. It's less than 1% of the population, about 0.5% roughly. And these are the folks that defend us overseas. And we need to make sure that if we've made promises to them, that we keep them. And that this is an administration that's breaking those promises.
You mentioned chaos before, and we are certainly living under the most unprecedented times. I mean, I'm 66, and I feel like we're in a sci-fi movie. Trump's popularity is incredibly low. He just seems to be losing on every front. Americans are angry as hell because of affordability, insurance, all the issues you talked about. And this does really feel like a year where not only Democrats can take the House, but could possibly take the Senate. I mean, 6-7 months ago, it was not talked about. Now, I think the latest polls that came out have it at around 50-50. You have races in Maine, Ohio, even Texas. I mean, James Tallarico or Jasmine Crockett would likely be facing Ken Paxton. So Texas could be in play. That we could see something this November that, A, we have never seen before, but B, may see it because of all the other shit we've never seen before and are dealing with as a country, as an electorate. How confident are you that that's a real possibility, that Florida, we have these states that, Florida, Texas, like they someday will flip. Is that day coming? Is it going to be in November?
Yeah, I think, look, I wouldn't have done this if I didn't think, wouldn't put my family back into the crosshairs. Because Trump is going to throw everything he has. I mean, he's when I reported his corruption the first time, he had the army investigate me, which the army cleared me of any wrongdoing because it was they just try to fabricate some nonsense. They're going to do everything they can. I'm on Trump's enemies list. I wouldn't have done that without a clear path to be able to wrestle control of this state back to accountability. I mean, the state has had single party rule for over a decade. And I think the population has seen what that's resulted in, a worsening education system. They rejected Medicaid subsidies from the federal government. All these things have made it harder and less affordable for the people of Florida. So I think all that said, it's clear that we're going to do something historic in the state, that we could deliver accountability through a Senate seat here. And frankly, a number of House seats too, because there are a number of amazing veterans running, career public servants running to represent congressional districts. And I think that we'll set ourselves up for a country that looks very different the first 2 years of Trump versus the last 2 years of Trump. And all I'm simply saying there is that, this would be a way to ensure that the worst instincts are not fed, that hard questions are answered, and that we have a means to ensure that you know that the U.S. government is delivering for citizens and not for the ultra wealthy. I think that's what people are looking for, and that's what we're going to be able to deliver around the country. And we're
As we talk about Trump and his chaos and his autocratic overreach, we've, I think, come to the conclusion that the founding fathers may have feared someone like Trump, but didn't necessarily do the best they could to prepare for him. You have seen, you've witnessed the inner workings of the executive branch. What reforms do you think Congress needs to legislate to strengthen oversight and prevent abuses of power to the level we've seen this past year?
I think there are a bunch of different places to look. I think if it would be just a fundamental mistake if we somehow flipped the switch and went back to the way things were, looked past the Trump administration, went back to the way things were. 90 million citizens, conservative, liberal, didn't participate because they felt like they were left out. We need to figure out how to bring those folks in and make sure we deliver for more Americans. So it's expanded healthcare. It is expanded education benefits that also account for not just the K through 12, but for folks to be able to adapt to AI that's going to displace a lot of people. I think it's legislation that expands the ability for folks to vote so that every legal vote is counted and it's as easy as possible. It's strengthening the checks and balances between the executive, the judicial, and the legislative branches. I think we should be potentially looking at term limits as a solution to this. Huge advocate for getting money out of politics, corporate money out of politics, and overturning the Citizens United ruling through legislation. It's like where isn't there a need for significant reforms?
My last question, and this is the most important question. So are you ready, Alex?
Mm-hmm.
I need absolute honesty here. Your brother, you mentioned him before, Eugene, he was recently elected to the House of Representatives. I know you guys are incredibly competitive. So is this campaign just all about one-upping him?
Look, absolute honesty. This guy is in Congress, and he describes his day as he's regularly congressing. And, I need to assert the competitive nature. I'm going to have to one up him with the Senate run. But fundamentally, the answer is that we have a lot of problems to address in the state. We do not have the representation to be able to that delivers for the people of Florida. I have an opportunity to do that, like I've done throughout my career, and we're going to win the seat, and then we'll end up living with one Vindman in the House and the older senior Vindman in the Senate.
Yeah, but then it's going to just ultimately be a race to the White House, isn't it?
Yeah, we might have to do a constitutional change because we weren't born here, but yeah.
Yeah. And if folks want to learn more about the campaign and support the campaign, where do they go?
So please come to alexvindman.com. Certainly, we could use your contributions. It's going to be an expensive race to reach 23 million people in Florida. We could also use your volunteers. This is an invite to people in Florida, but around the country. We are going to need folks to pick up the phone and call and help us get out to vote. We've got some special elections here in March in Florida. So collecting volunteers to be able to get folks connected and help us increase voter turnout. But go to the site and pitch in, please.
Alrighty. We'll look forward to having you back to keep us informed of this very important campaign.
I appreciate it, Andy. It's always great to be on with you. And frankly, you don't look like you're 66, so keep doing whatever you're doing.
Botox, Ozempic, it's all kinds of stuff. Facial massage, whatever I can get my hands on, that's what I go for.
Sounds good.
Say hi to Rachel for me.
All right, will do. Bye.
Bye-bye. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhinecliff, with additional editing by Maddie Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Langell. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.